it's really interesting because the Channel Islands superintendent was this guy named Tim Setnica, and he was there for all this. And there's just a long, dark history. I don't want to go too in the weeds here, but there is a there's a dark history with all this
we enjoy
stuff.
the weeds, so that's why we do a long form podcast. Don't be afraid of the weeds.
Well, don't tell me with a good time here. This is like what I've been living in for weeks. But I mean, yeah, the Channel Islands stuff is really interesting. I think someone, and I'm sure it's happened all over. I think there's quite a history with the Park Service. They have a real track record here. But there was on one of the islands, on Santa Cruz Island, I did a whole article about how, there was one lone holdout, 82-year-old man named Francis Guarini. He didn't want to sell, or at least he wanted to sell for a good price. And, before long, first of all, they forced Congress they had Congress force him off. So they ended up forcing the sale through. But even then, he was dragging his feet a little bit, getting the hunting club that leased from him on Santa Cruz Island off. So lo and behold, the Park Service decided they were raiding Chumash Indian burial grounds and landed on the island with a Black Hawk helicopter and 20 armed officers to raid this little hunting camp. Turns out they'd conducted this 2-year investigation, and the details are I read the whole appeal. It's just very shocking to me, very, very flimsy. They ended up charging one guy with a felony for shooting at a raven and I guess having beads or something, or like picking up a piece of dirt in an area that was supposedly an archaeological site of Chumash Indians. They'd had these undercover parks rangers going on hunts with the hunting club to try to, catch them in the act of disturbing Indian sites on Santa Cruz Island. It was just really, really, really shady and gross. So all that to say that happened on Santa Cruz Island. Just imagine there was like a little 15-year-old girl in the house, and they shackled her for hours, didn't say who they were, searching the whole house for Indian burial remains or Indian artifacts. And all the while, they just happened to really want these people off for their park that they have planned. So just stuff like that, really dirty. And then on Santa Cruz Island, or on Santa Rosa Island, rather, the superintendent of the islands wrote this expose in, I think, early 2000s. He had signed off on that raid on the Santa Cruz Island. He had been part of all of it. He'd seen all of it, this guy, Tim Setnica, and he went through some kind of change of heart, and he wrote a 3-part editorial for the Santa Barbara News Press, where he kind of blew the whistle on the Park Service and described everything they did. And he specifically got into the way that they did water samples in areas that they knew water didn't flow, so it would look really bad for the ranchers. They put them under a Clean Water Act, some kind of an abatement order, so that they had to clean up the water. All of these little things designed ultimately to force the ranchers off. And he broke it down in great detail what had happened. So again, to your point about, water samples and water pollutants, he described how he was there and he saw the way that the government manipulated those samples to get the goal that they always wanted, which was to get the cattle off the island, to get the ranchers off the island. And in their case, they also decided that the elk and deer should go too, because the elk and deer were not native to the island. And so all of the operations on Santa Rosa Island ended up with shipping the cattle off, shipping the horses off, and machine gunning wild pigs, elk, and deer from helicopters and just killing them because they were restoring it to its natural state without animals on it. So that's the Park Service. But yeah, just
Sorry, again, restoring it, bringing a Black Hawk helicopter.
Right.
Because we want to restore it to the natural state.
Yeah.
It's not funny.
Yep. I know, but it's kind of beyond belief, right? It just doesn't seem like, it's not common sense.
Right.
But, yeah. And Tim Setnica went on to have this meeting in 2014 at Point Reyes, and he said, you guys are next. They're going to come for you. The Park Service has no soul, and they're going to come for you. Like, you're not going to be able to stay in ranching. They're absolutely going to kick you off. And 10 years later, they did.
Wow.
Very sad. I keep saying that. Very sad, but it is very sad. This might be like too far out there, so feel free to just dismiss this, both of you. But with Trump firing a bunch of federal employees. We've heard about Park Services employees being let go. Do you think that will have any effect on this, or is it too late?
Well, I think changing the Department of the Interior is good. Doug Burgum is the new head of the Department of the Interior. I have hopes that he will address this and bring in better people. I'm not sure who the head of the Park Service is or if they've announced that yet. Trump's been moving very fast, uncharacteristically fast. So it's, it's really high turnover rate. And I do feel, there's a lot of great rangers out there. I know there's tons of great people who work for the Park Service. This isn't to impugn all of them by any means. It's the brass, really. It's these people in the offices who have this agenda. So yeah, I'm hopeful that they'll reverse course on their attitude toward agriculture, because some of my sources, all of which were really anonymous if they were talking about the Park Service, told me that this really goes deep. It's part of the culture and mindset of the Park Service that they hate ranchers and they hate farmers and they want all of that off public land. And when you look at how much land the federal government owns, that starts to be a problem. I'm not saying we should farm in Yosemite and Yellowstone and these really special jewels that we should all be able to enjoy in the United States, whatever. But when you have millions of acres of land that's designated federal land, if we want to be self-sufficient, feed ourselves, we do have to look at multi-use on public lands. And that's what these agencies are tasked to do. So anyway, yeah, I hope there's going to be change coming. I know people are appealing the point raised thing to Trump and to Burgum, but it feels like a kind of an uphill battle at this point.
Hey, thanks for checking out that clip from the California Underground podcast. If you enjoyed it, make sure you subscribe, like, share, review, comment, hit that notification bell as well. It all helps with the algorithm, helps us grow the channel, and helps support this show. Also, if you're a fan of listening to podcasts on audio, we're everywhere you can find us on audio. Spotify, Apple, Google, Podbean. I don't know. You can find them anywhere on audio. Or if you enjoy listening here on YouTube and watching the video, you can watch here as well. And if you just want to sit back and watch some more clips, you can click on this button right here. And if you want to subscribe to the show, you can click on this button right here. All right. Thanks.